This video is a comparison of two different deadlift movements. And in essence, what I'm giving you are concepts and ideas, the sports science, because I find it interesting. Perhaps you're like me and you love the ideas behind training. You love the intricacies and the concepts. And so this research was brought to my attention by someone called Eddie Joe, and he's a PhD. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist. He's an associate professor of exercise physiology and a director of human performance, and a researcher. And he creates these really nice graphics on Instagram. And this research looked into the difference between the hex bar deadlift and conventional deadlift. Now, just to start, in before the nonsense, I'm not telling you to do one or the other. You don't have to do either of them. Your programming is specific to you. You can conventional deadlift, you can hex bar deadlift. The purpose of this video is just to look at some of the differences in these movements that this research showed, and you may find it useful for your training, you may not, that's fine, but my channel is about looking at these things, presenting ideas, and trying to condense research and giving that to you. So this study is by Kamara et al. 2016, and this study also included Dr. Andy Galpin, who I talk about so much because the man is outstanding. And so I've linked the research down below for you to read, but we have to remember that no piece of academic research is the set in stone answer. They are contributions towards a knowledge base, and this video should be viewed as a contribution for you. It should not be viewed as a set in stone guideline or clear directional instructions. Well, the sample size was 20 men who had to be able to lift 1.5 times body weight for both lifts. Essentially, that's fairly beginner standard, but what that would tell us is they are just fairly competent with a deadlift movement. And so the way that this research was performed, the participants performed a 1 repetition max deadlift using a conventional stance. This was a ramped process where they worked towards a 1 repetition max, and they had 5 attempts at their 1 repetition max to give them that baseline number. There was then a minimum of 48 hours between further testing. And so the testing for both movements, the conventional deadlift and the hex bar or trap bar deadlift, were 3 reps performed at 65% of their 1 repetition max and 3 reps at 85% repetition max using both lifts, the hex bar and the conventional deadlift. And also, in addition, a specific cue was given to try and use maximal velocity through the concentric and to lower the bar down slowly through the eccentric phase. And also interesting is that the hex bar and the conventional deadlift were tested in completely random order for the participants. And in addition to that testing, there was also EMG testing and also force and velocity tests, but you can read that in the research. And so what did the results say? Number one, there was no significant difference between 1 repetition max values between the 2 lifts. The hex bar produced a 21% greater quad activation. The straight bar conventional deadlift had 14% more hamstring activation and 21% more erector spinae activation. There was 2% greater force production using the hex bar. There was 13% greater power production using the hex bar, which statistically would be seen as just a moderate increase. And then we had a 10% greater velocity with the hex bar. And so what is the application of this to your training that the research has discussed? Well, for individuals with lower back injuries or pain, the results of this study suggest that the hex bar may be the better choice. May be the better choice. Don't confuse the wording because it matters. Because of its ability to evenly distribute the load amongst all joints and reduce the moment of the lumbar spine. Firstly, if the goal of the training session was to emphasize strength of the lumbar region and hamstrings, the straight bar seems to be the appropriate choice. Finally, the hex bar may be a more effective method for maximal force, power, and velocity. And so when you look at these two movements, what can we take from this research? Well, the hex bar, according to this research, has a strong application towards athletic performance, the velocity, the force increase, the power increase, and also quad activation, if that's something that you would be looking into within your training. But that does not mean that you should not use a straight bar deadlift or you should just use a hex bar. These are just concepts around these exercises which may fit your programming due to your specificity. And absolutely, you can develop your strength and your velocity with a straight bar deadlift. That is not what this is saying, so do not be confused. Whilst you can look at the results and the hex bar had more benefits based from this research, you have to take exercises within context. And so in no way should you look at research like this and think the hex bar is better than the straight bar, or the straight bar is better than the hex bar. They are different exercises and they have different benefits to them. And in an ideal world, you might have the resources and the time to experiment with both. But if you just want to straight bar conventional, perfectly fine. And remember, focus on your execution. Again, don't be paralyzed by the comparisons, the concepts. If you've chosen the straight bar, focus on execution. And Dr. Joe says that the hex bar variation is of interest to athletes focused on training strength attributes. That is not to say that the straight bar should be neglected. And so that's how experts look at these sorts of debates. So if you're somebody who's looking to increase strength and muscle size, and you're just looking for a major compound, absolutely, just use a conventional deadlift. Absolutely effective as long as you are executing the exercise correctly, progressively overloading, etc. And you know, some gyms don't have hex bars. And if they don't, and you're watching videos like this or other people's videos and you're thinking, I have to use a hex bar for this, don't overthink it. And so I'm James Linker. Next video, I'm going to make a bit of a drama video. Forgive me that one. I'll see you soon.